Hey everyone, welcome to a very special review. As always, my name is Jay. And look what I got. That's upside down. Look at this, people. I care about you guys so much, I went into the future, got the 7th edition book, and went back into the past so I can review it for you before it even comes out. Because it comes out tomorrow. How did I get it? No idea. You ask enough people, you'll get it. So, as you're probably well aware, if you care anything about Warhammer 40K, 7th edition comes out tomorrow, and I have it right here. So, yeah, I'm going to do a review. I've given it a read a couple times through. There are some changes and some goods and bads and some things I don't care about. But, yeah, so this is going to be a multi-part review because I want to go into some good depth on each book. And to do that, I basically got to break it up into several parts. Otherwise, I couldn't be able to render it or upload it. But definitely expect a review on each one. So, let's start off. 7th edition, look at that. 3 books now. 3! Let's zoom in. 3 books. So right now they've divided, Games Workshop, they've actually intelligently designed it so that, look at that, the rules, you can just open up the rules, and it's the rules. That's it. No fluff, no needed. It's a very thin book, easy to carry, easy to store. I love it. I love this little heart thing. But yeah. You know, I like that. I like the fact that they finally just made the rules. This is all you need. Unfortunately, you have to buy all 3, and they're $100 Canadian. But it's a different story altogether. Yeah. So we'll start off with what I like. Obviously, I'm going to give this is my first impressions, and then I'll go into some more in depth on each section. We'll do some stuff like that. So my first impressions so far. Here's what I like. First of all, this is a beautifully made book. Beautiful. Like, I can't show you stuff for copyright purposes, but everything. It's beautifully written. Beautifully made, I mean. It has nice pictures, it's well put together, nice hardback. I really like this rulebook, the way that it looks. That's the good. What other things is good? Basically, throughout the book, they have attempted, Games Workshop has attempted to streamline as well as remove the ambiguity from their rules, specifically with their orders. So now what you find is for each section of the game, there's a very set steps that you can take. Step 1 is this, step 2 is this, step 3 is this, step 4 is this, step 5 is this. And it's great because it removes the ambiguity of what happens at the same time. What if this happens? What if they come in from reserve? What if there's like powers? All these things are removed by them putting in some great orders. Second, they actually fixed some of the problems with the previous edition. Specifically like the range issues with multi-gun squads. That's been fixed in this. Yeah, you know, that's basically it. I like some of the things I've read so far. The bads, number 1, is this edition necessarily needed? It's only been 2 years, less than 2 years even. I think it was July 2 years ago that 6th edition came out, and it's always been on 4-year cycles. So, I don't know. This rulebook, we're going to go over the rules. And you're going to see there are some big additions, but nothing really is a game changer. I don't think this will actually change the balance within an army and the balances between armies right now. I still think shooting armies are going to dominate. Yeah. And I don't think there's a lot of change. This is by far the smallest amount of change between editions that I've seen in a long time. There was huge changes between 4th and 5th, 5th and 6th. Not really that big of changes other than this new psychic phase, which is kind of a weird morph of the magic phase of fantasy. But that's a different story, and we'll get to that eventually. What else did I like about this book? They've added more objective missions in. So there's new sets of missions, I like that. And they kind of have some cool stuff. I got some cards for tactical objectives, which I will be going over with later with you guys in a future video. They're little cards. Here they are right here. Ooh. That's cool. But yeah, you know, I don't see it as that huge of a change. Basically, Games Workshop lately has been repackaging the same information in various new bows and ribbons lately, if you haven't noticed. Basically, Escalation was Apocalypse. But they called it Escalation. And now Escalation is in the rulebook. You know, Stronghold Assault in the rulebook, basically. Almost everything from Stronghold Assault, minus a couple small things, in the rulebook. you know? And most of the rules, as I said, we're going to go over in pretty good detail. You're going to see that most of the rules are stayed the same. So it's kind of a repackaging. But it's a new rule set, so obviously you got to have this, and you got to fork out your $100 to get the new rules. Another thing I really didn't like, as I said, was the not change. It didn't... Alright, just go back in history. For those of you who are relatively new to Warhammer 40K, let's go back to 4th edition. 4th edition actually was very favorable towards the assaulting armies. Because there was no such thing as Overwatch at the time, and you could literally just jump into a unit, wipe it out, and then consolidate into another combat, so they couldn't shoot you the following round. And it was hilarious. Gene Stealers owned the game. But between 4th and 5th, they tried to rebalance. They tried to bring it more central, so that, you know, shooting armies and assaulting armies could both do really well. So they removed the assaulting into combat, or sorry, the jumping into another combat after assault. Right? But then here came 6th edition, where 6th edition, they took it from relatively centered to way in the opposite direction, favoring the shooty armies. First of all, they made it so that once you shoot a squad, you have to remove the guys in the front, which essentially slows down, completely slowing down, and sometimes will completely prevent an assaulting army from even getting to you, because each turn they just move up, you wipe out the front guys, then the next turn the middle guys fill that spot, and then you wipe them out, and so forth and so forth. This happens to me a lot of times with my heavily assault armies in Warhammer 40K 6th edition. Second, Overwatch. Overwatch is stupidly powerful for some armies, so what happened in the end? Basically, right now the game is dominated by very, very shooty and maneuverable armies, primarily Tau, Eldar, some Space Marines. Very maneuverable, very shooty, like think White Scars, Tau, Eldar. I don't think this is going to change that. My prediction, obviously this is my opinion, leave comments in the comment section down below, but I don't think this is going to change that. I think Tau and Eldar are going to be just fine and just dominate you just as bad as before. Another thing that they've added into this is now D66, they call them. D66s, which essentially you roll 2 dice. You roll the first one, it's 1 to 6, gives you a value. Second one, 1 to 6. You put them one in front of the other, and that gives you an objective, for example, in certain missions. A certain objective that you have to accomplish. Yes, and also there were rumors that going into this edition that they were going to try to bring it back more central, as I was just attracting. They didn't bring back, unfortunately, you can't consolidate into assault like you used to be able to. That was a rumor. It was wrong. And also, there was a rumor that if you Overwatch, you can't shoot in the following phase, i.e. Tau. That's not in there either. So this is what I'm saying, it's not going to really change it. But as I said, they did really try to streamline the rules in the sense, make them very clear. Very, very clear. Like, for example, there's the term summary right here. I can't show it to you really. And now there are, so now we'll start. Let's start at the beginning of the book. Now, in this edition, there are now 6 phases to your turn. 6 phases. The first one is called the start of your turn. Resolve any rules described as happening at the start of your turn. So we start at the start of your turn. And the rules down implicitly state at the start of your turn. Makes sense, very clear. Next, then there's the movement phase, which we'll be going over in just a moment. Any changes. Then there's the psychic phase. Now this is the big new phase, and it kind of does parallel the magic phase of fantasy. But in fantasy, basically, I'll go over the differences in a moment. Then there's the shooting phase. Shooting phase is basically identical as always. Very few things changed in the shooting phase. Assault phase, not a whole lot changed either. And then the end of your turn. Cool. Now before the game, you roll for your mission type. And there's night fighting. Now night fighting, it just clearly states that they changed night fighting slightly. That just talk with your opponent. If you want to include, if at least one of you wants to include night fighting, roll a d6 at the beginning of the game. On a 4+, night fighting happens. And basically that means turn 1, everyone on the battlefield has stealth. There's no longer measuring distances, and there's no longer shrouded. It just basically gives your entire army has stealth unless your opponent can ignore cover, which a bunch of them do. So we'll start off with the movement phase. The movement phase is basically identical to the way it was before. Very little changed, but as I said, like they have a bunch of nice, narrations about each one going up and down in terrain. Very, very little changed. There is... The only thing that really changed was assault distances for movement. But, yeah. Difficult terrain is still taken as the before. Dangerous is still the thing. The big change, we're just going to kind of skip through the moving phase, because the moving phase, I said, nothing really new. It's only a couple pages. Let's get to the psychic phase, people, because that's where the craziness happens. Now, I'm going to go into some really big detail on the psychic powers, but that'll be a different video. Spoiler alert, Tyranids, no psychic powers other than their book. Basically every other army in the game gets access to some other stuff. They also created a couple new psychic powers. They basically took the Grey Knight powers and called it something new, and now the Grey Knights have to roll for random powers at the beginning, including like Terminators who used to have Hammer Hand. They have to roll and see if they get Hammer Hand now. And there's now the ability to summon demons. That's pretty cool. Grey Knights can't have that. So now there's the psychic phase. Now there's psychers and psychic powers, and a psyker and psychic unit refers to any unit with the psyker, psychic pilot, vehicles, or Brotherhood of Psychers, Sorcerer Special Rules, i.e. Grey Knights. There's mastery levels. They're the same as before. Mastery level equals the number of spells you can cast. Sorry, not the number of spells you can cast, the number of spells you can obtain. We're going to go over that in a little while, in a bit, but yeah, the number of psychic powers a psyker can use each turn depends on the mastery level. Even a psyker with a mastery level 1 is a fearsome foe. So establishing mastery levels basically says everyone is assumed to be mastery level 1 unless otherwise specified as 2 or above. The number of psychic powers, a psyker's entry will usually state how many psychic powers the psyker has. Where this is not the case, the psyker knows a number of psychic powers equal to a mastery level, i.e. 1, 1, and so forth. Each of these powers will be generated as described opposite, which I'll go over in just a moment. If a psyker generates all of his psychic powers from the same psychic discipline, that psyker will automatically know that discipline's Primaris power in addition to any other powers they know as described in the psychic focus below. So that's pretty cool. So if you decide to take all your, so I guess for Tyranids, for example, because they can't take from any other power, they automatically know the Primaris and they get to know the other ones just for free. Oh, sorry, not for free. They roll on their Tyranid powers and then they get their Primaris for free. That's a cool bonus. If a psyker has 1 or more weapons with a Force special rule, that psyker automatically knows the Force psychic power. Force psychic power is obviously activating, your opponent goes. So psychic focus. If a psyker generates all of his powers from the same psychic discipline, psyker is said to have psychic focus and gains discipline's Primaris power in addition to his other powers. If during the course of the game, that psyker gains a psychic power from a different psychic discipline, he immediately loses psychic focus. Cool. If a psyker has any psychic powers that are not part of a discipline, such as force, these powers are not considered when determining. So yeah. So a librarian with a force sword doesn't count that force as negating his ability to get free Primaris power. There's also chaos psychic focus. If a psyker has a mark of chaos or is a demon of a particular chaos god, that model automatically knows the Primaris power of the discipline that corresponds to that. Cool. Now there's generating psychic powers. Now that's the same as normal. Psychers generate their psychic powers before the game begins. You roll, your d6 corresponding to a chart. Basically, all the cool powers, other than the ones they created a demon one, they created a Grey Knights one, and they made Biomancy even better. And I'll go over those ones slightly later. But Biomancy got really good, even better than before. I wish Tyranids had it. You roll. There's the Primaris powers. You can take one set of when you roll, unless you have, unless you take all 3 from the same group, then you get it for free. And that's it. And then there's resolving the psychic phase. Now this is where it gets really interesting in that you fantasy players will have a kind of understanding what's happening here, but in fantasy, you roll all your dice together, and whoever has the higher number Either it gets the power off or it's negated. In this one, it's number of 4 pluses or 6 pluses that matter. So I'll talk to you about, so generating warp charge. Here we go. At the beginning of each psychic phase, the player whose turn it is. So if it's my turn, I get to roll. I roll a d6. And me, as well as my opponent, get the number, get that number added to their warp charge pool. So if I roll a 3, both me and my opponent each get 3 warp charge points. And then next, you add up all of the mastery levels of all the Psychers on the table in your army. So if I was playing Tyranids and I have a level 2 Hive Tyrant and 2 Zoanthropes, which are also level 2 each, that's 6 points. And I add my 6 to my 3, so I have 9 points, and my opponent does the same. So this part will obviously favor armies that are full of Psychers, primarily Grey Knights and Tyranids. Of course, Tyranids, pretty weak powers to begin with, but that's a different story. So we add them together. And the number of the dice, so we put that many dice, basically, in our pool, representing these numbers. And basically you go until the player whose turn it is, if you have 0 warp charge points or you can't cast any more spells, it ends. So now it's manifesting psychic powers. Only the player whose turn it is can attempt to manifest psychic powers. Cool. Psychic units in the way, but no one can attempt to manifest the same psychic power more than once per psychic phase. No unit can attempt to manifest the same psychic power more than once per psychic phase. There you go. So if you have a Psyker level 2, he can't cast the same spell twice. So, to manifest a psychic power, and as I said, I'm going to go over this in just a sec, but you can clearly see here, there's an actual list, step by step, on how to go through each part of this phase. So basically, you start by, you declare your target and the caster, or not the caster, the Psyker and his target, or of the spell. So you select the Psyker and psychic power. Unless you have 0 warp charge points remaining, select one of your Psyker units, then nominate a psychic power known to that unit that you wish to manifest. Number 2, declare target. If the power requires a target, choose the target. Number 3, take the psychic test. Now the psychic test means you can choose, I'll go over the wording, but the Psyker must now expend warp charge points and attempt to harness them by taking a psychic test. If the test is failed, the psychic power fails and nothing further happens. If 2 or more 6s are rolled, the Psyker suffers Perils of the Warp, which we'll go over in just a moment. That's nasty. Perils of the Warp now is really, really nasty, which is resolved immediately. Then you go deny the witch. But let's stop there for a second and take the psychic test. So basically, for a psychic test, let's say I require 1 warp charge to get a normal spell off. That's how much the normal psychic powers are. 1 warp charge point. I can choose to put as many dice as I want out of my pool to roll at that moment. Let's say I really, really want that psychic power to go off. I can choose to roll 4 dice. And basically, I count the numbers of 4+ results. So for every 4+, I get a, technically they call it tokens, but I just need to roll more or equal to, I need to roll an equal to or greater number of 4+ than the number of warp charge points it takes to get the psychic power off. So if it's if it's a warp charge 1, I need to have at least one of my dice roll 4+. And I can choose to roll as many dice as I want. I could choose all my dice, 1 dice and risk it 50-50. I could choose 3 dice and the odds then I roll at least 1 4+. And if I get the equal to or greater number, it goes off. And that's it. That's a psychic test. Now if I rolled at any point the number of dice, if there are 2 6s that I roll, so if I choose to roll 3 dice and 2 of them end up being 6s, say 6, 6, 1, I peril. And the perils are very nasty. Then you roll a d6 and you see what happens. Number 1 is called Dragged into the Warp. The Psyker must take a leadership test. If the test is passed, the Psyker suffers 1 wound. Glancing hit with no saves allowed of any kind. If the test is failed, The Psyker is removed as a casualty and his unit suffers D6, Strength 6, AP 1 hits. Ouch. That would be brutal for the Grey Knights. Ouch. Number 2, Mental Purge. Psyker suffers 1 wound / glancing hit. This power is immediately lost and cannot be used for the Psyker for the rest of the battle. Number 3 is Power Drain. The Psyker suffers 1 wound. And then, in addition, if it is currently the Psychic phase, roll a D3. Both players lose that number of Warp Charge points. That's kind of weird. Number 4, Psychic Backlash. Psyker suffers 1 wound. With obviously no saves of any kind. Number 5, Etheric Feedback. The Psyker must take a leadership test. If the test is failed, the Psyker suffers 1 wound, with no saves of any kind allowed. If the test is passed, the Psyker suffers no effects. Cool. And number 6, Warp Surge. This is kind of funny. The Psyker must take a leadership test. If the test is failed, the Psyker suffers 1 wound. If the test is passed, the Psyker gains a 3+ invulnerable save, as well as Flesh Bane, Armor Bane, and Smash rules until the start of your next friendly Psychic phase. That's pretty cool. 1 in 6 chance of doing fun. You know, that's pretty cool. So that's it. And then, if your power goes off, then there's the Deny the Witch. Now, I don't honestly know. They're going to have to FAQ this, and by the time maybe this is posted, maybe there'll be an FAQ soon. Tyranids, I don't know how the Shadows and the Warp will now affect Psychic powers. We'll find out about that and when they change that. But number 4 is Deny the Witch. If the Psych test is passed, one of the enemy targets gets a chance to expend Warp Charge points to nullify the power by taking a Deny the Witch test. So basically, if you cast a Psychic power against me, I can once again use as many number of dice as I want to try to negate that Psychic power. However, a Warp, it only is2. I have to roll 6s. But there are modifiers which could bump it up to 6. So if you cast 2, let's say you decide to cast a Warp Charge 1 Psychic power against me, and you roll 2 successful dice, 2 4+. I have to negate both of those 4+ by rolling 2 dice equal to 6+ to negate that Psychic power to Deny the Witch. I know it's a little confusing, and there are bonuses. +1 if you're Psychic, if you have the Psyker, Psychic Pilot, or Brotherhood of Psykers special rule. +1 if you have mastery level higher than the Psyker's casting, and +1 for Adamantium Will. So if you have all those, like some Space Marines will have, technically for each 3+ that you roll, you negate one of your opponent's 4+ dice. And if you negate all of your opponent's dice for that Psychic power, you Deny the Witch. And then number 5 is Resolve the Psychic power, preventing its passed and not denied the Witch. And that's it. So that is, that's the Psychic phase in a nutshell. There are a bunch of different Psychic powers, but I will be going over them in a future video just by itself. I'm probably going to be the next one is Psychic power, or maybe in the end I'll go over all the Psychic powers. But that's it. Also, a Psychic Hood once again allows you to allows the Psyker. If I have a Psyker with Psychic Hood, I can make him take the Deny the Witch test instead of the target that you decided. There's still Maledictions, Witchfire, same thing as before. Focus Witchfire, same thing as before. Nova still the same before. But now there's a Conjuration, and Conjurations allow you to summon things, i.e. demons. And Conjurations basically mean you can instantly summons a squad. They arrive via Deep Strike within the maximum range of the spell. And I'll go over the spells later. Or sorry, Psychic powers. To me, they seem really like spells. And this phase alone may end up breaking the game. We'll see. But I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be powerful. I know that the most powerful phase of Fantasy is the Magic phase. I don't think this has the same hit, but I think it's going to be a really fun phase to deal with. So that's it. I'm probably going to stop here because we're at 24 minutes. I'm going to keep going with this entire thing. But as you saw, these are my first impressions. Some good things. I'm going to go over the more rules, more changes as we go. I'm going to go over this in extreme detail. And we've gone over the movement phase and this really new Psychic phase. Overall, it's going to change a couple things. But in the end, I don't know. A lot of the rules stayed the same. I don't know if this is really justifying a new rule book. It seems like they just took a lot of supplements, put them together, and changed a couple things out of the psychic phase. But yeah, and next video we'll go over the shooting phase, and we'll continue on in this book. The shooting phase is mostly the same too, but we'll go over a couple of the big changes. And some weapon stuff, and we'll just keep going through this book and see where it takes us. So until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting everyone. Please like the video, comment in the comment section down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't even done so. Check out the warp. Do it. Until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting everyone.